the ultimate last word in when the substantial compliance has been met. I think we should, if we disagree with any finding on the compliance officer, I think it's more incumbent upon us to point out those disagreements and present those either before the court or to the Justice Department in their evaluation, rather than instructing the compliance officer to reevaluate what, based on the compliance officer's discussion today, is basically 5 years worth of evaluations. I'm not sure that will be fruitful down the road, so just please keep that in mind when making your votes, and if anybody has a view on that, I would love to hear that view.
Thank you, Vadim. Britt?
I don't have anything.
So I actually do have something in response to Vadim. I think what we've heard tonight from the compliance officer is that they don't have the data. It's too early to tell what the outcomes are. So given that, if it's too early to tell, then I believe that means it's too early to determine that there's been substantial compliance, because as I read the agreement, there would need to be some connection between the outputs, having meetings and training, and what that ends up in, or else this the settlement agreement means absolutely nothing. And I do believe it means something. And so if we've heard from the compliance officer that in fact they don't have that data, I think it is incumbent upon us to point that out and suggest that we wait until we have the data to show whether there has been substantial compliance. And I would also note that this recommendation is addressed to Chief Outlaw and Mayor Wheeler in addition to the compliance officer, and it is the role of the PSEP in our charge to communicate to Chief Outlaw and Mayor Wheeler about precisely about the settlement agreement. So I think this is completely within our realm of responsibilities, and everything I've heard tonight convinces me even more that we should vote yes.
Thank you, Elliot. Amy?
The only thing I have concern about is whether or not number 89 really belongs to us, or whether it belongs to the CCOs. Because it does state that the United States expects that the local CCOs will establish by mid-2013 one or more of the drop-off centers for first responders. And if you'd have been around like I was back in the design of the CCO in this conversation with Unity, it was more or less to give the police officers a place where they could legally take clients without having to have a referral system. So Unity was built so that it could be an instant place for police to take folks in serious crisis to get care without having to go through the standard referral process for getting into these inpatient beds. So I just want everybody to know this recommendation still stands with the CCOs being responsible, which is not a city event. So I just want everybody to be aware of that.
Thank you.
In response, I'd like to note that we're responsible for the entire document, the settlement agreement. We're not responsible for specific items.
The only things I would add to the mental illness subcommittee recommendation, when it says 2 members of PSEP, I think we should just put it to, and I know this is really technical, but I think it should just go to who we're trying to give it to. So I would in the future recommend saying it goes to Mayor Wheeler and those folks. And okay, can someone show me the other recommendation? I lost my copy of the sea of papers.
There's 2 different
Yeah.
We can't make recommendations directly to them, though. We want to make them directly to you guys. That was the discussion we had earlier.
Okay, okay. The other part I would say, where is this going to go? Oh, yeah. In the second one it said, item 89 is arguably the most expensive and complicated thing in the settlement agreement. It has not been discussed by COAB or PSEP. I feel like that kind of just takes away a little bit from PSEP, because you guys did discuss it within your subcommittee, and that is part of PSEP. So I just think that would just kind of detract from it a little bit, so I would probably just scratch that line out. Other than that, I think both of them look great.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add.
On the, I just want to see where we stand with the funding for this, item 89. That and with the new CCO 2.0, the Medicaid, population goes to the CCOs and not to Montgomery County. So, I think it needs to be a little bit more research, and I wanted the, city attorney to kind of comment on the responsible party for this, and if we can, ask for money and provide resources.
So the paragraph, I think, as has been identified, oh, sorry. The paragraph, as has been previously identified, really talks about what the CCOs will do. At the time, there was a real effort, and the city was agreeing in the settlement agreement to support that effort, but it does clearly delineate the settlement agreement terms, do say, as has been identified by Ms. Anderson, that is the responsibility of the CCOs. And I'm just going to say this really briefly. The settlement agreement is a negotiated agreement, a contract between the city and the United States that was agreed to as to what those obligations were. It's like any other contract. So it needs, the city's obligations need to be measured, and it's the whole city, not just the Portland Police Bureau. The whole city is a party to it. And so what I would argue and will argue is that the specific obligations that are set forth in the agreement are what need to be met for substantial compliance. And just to follow up on what Dr. Rosenbaum said, that does not mean that there is not a lot of additional work to be done. That does not mean that the PSEP should not identify and carry forward many things outside of the settlement agreement. But I think the question for you all as you look at this is, are you looking at the specific terms of the settlement agreement? And nothing in the settlement agreement, I would say, and I freely acknowledge I am the city's lawyer, right? So take that for what it is. I mean, that is my client. But nothing in the settlement agreement obligates the city to fund community mental health services. That is not generally the function of a city. That's a function of community care organizations, the county, the state. And so the city did commit to work toward establishing those goals, but the city did not agree to assume those goals.
Excuse me, before you leave, you mentioned that you agreed, that the city agreed to support it, item 89, and you also called it a contract. Am I mistaken?
Correct.
Thank you.
Good cross-examination.
Are you finished, Lakeisha?
Yeah, I just wanted to see where we stood to not make unreasonable.
Perfect, thank you. Andrew?
Just one comment from me, and it's and I appreciate the subcommittee bringing these and explaining them to us. So thank you. I want to explain one of my no votes, which will be on the recommendation for the 25% support. I previously voted no on another recommendation on another topic, suggesting that Portland spend a certain amount of money in the millions of dollars on a project. And the reason is that I think there are an extraordinary number of public needs in this city, in this county, in this state, in the country. They exceed our revenues, and as a result, we have to make very difficult choices as a community together about what we prioritize. And I am not prepared from where I sit to say that the city of Portland and the taxpayers, that include everyone in this room, should support this at 25% or 45% or 0%. But rather believe in the broader goal of more adequately funding and supporting mental health services. So I wanted to explain why I'm voting no on that one. Thanks.
Thank you. And just so you know, we are into the 10 minutes of the committee, but we're going to keep going just so we can get through everybody's comments. Yolanda?
I don't have a question at this time. I just wanted to say thanks for shortening the piece of recommendation proposal process for community members. It's a lot easier to read and understand now.
Thank you for that comment.